Hello, let's talk about sitting on the floor today. So, we're going to talk about why it's important, how it benefits you. We're going to talk about how you can support sitting on the floor, even if you've got injuries or conditions that make it tricky, may still be completely possible, how to progress your journey of working and sitting on the floor. And we'll talk about the different types of equipment and different ways of sitting. To some extent, all of those different categories are infinite because it's a free process. It's not some rigid thing. Actually, the whole joy of sitting on the floor, being comfortable to work from, sit on, play with your kids or your family on the floor, is that it is completely freeing, that you're not constrained by the rigid setup of a chair or a stool or a bench or whatever your current system of being is. Also, sitting on the floor is never static. You're always changing your position. So, first of all, I've already given you a few of the benefits, but let's talk about other benefits, like the more functional benefits. So, yeah, from a functional movement, body movement point of view, there are few things as foundational and more useful for you. If you have all your limbs, you walk around, you lie down when you go to bed, you sit on chairs. What most people miss is that bit where they're down on the ground, where there is nothing restricting their movement really, where they can fidget as freely as they want, where they can sit in any format, they can have legs wide, hips wide, legs in, knees up. So comfortable and free. Most people miss that. Everything is somewhat rigid. You lie down in bed, you sit on chairs, you stand and you walk around, and that's basically it. This space between standing on your 2 feet and being all the way down on the floor is where all the extra bits of magic happen. So sitting on the floor or becoming comfortable with spending time on the floor is that missing link for a lot of people. It's true. And even if you're a person who trains a lot using the floor, yoga, or maybe you're a GMB person, or maybe you're an animal flow person, or maybe you are a Pilates person, you already know how important it is. And you may have already been confronted with what a journey it can be to be comfortable. And maybe you still haven't been able to, or wanted to, or felt inclined to bring that journey into your day-to-day life a little bit more. So functionally, sitting on the floor will improve your flexibility, your overall stabilizing strength, your balance, and your general functional movement, your joint stability. How and why can sitting on the floor do that one thing? Well, what on the first, like most basic level, in order to sit on the floor, you need to be able to get up from and get down to the floor. And any good coach or any good training program worth its salt will contain elements of that kind of work. Can you lie down flat on your face on the floor and get yourself back up all the way to standing, maybe even to balancing, maybe without even using your hands? Doesn't matter how, it's not choreography. Can you then make your way all the way back down? Any way at all? Can you do that comfortably without making weird noises and accidentally twisting an ankle? So, yeah, maybe you can, but maybe one day you won't be able to, and you'll realize that there's a skill missing in you. And sometimes complacency and hubris can kind of get in the way of that. So, that's something to consider. Also, when you sit on the floor, there are many, and I would say a majority of people I've encountered actually have a lot of trouble with it. Just the ability to sit with a tall spine comfortably for any length of time on the floor. When you do yoga teacher training, if you have good trainers, they'll tell you the most difficult work to do well and do right and comfortably is the seated work. It is not the really hardcore core exercises, the planks, the press ups. Being able to spend a lot of time seated and do the strength work seated is where things tend to go wrong and people suffer and struggle. So learning to sit comfortably and have the right support is really important. The main injuries that get in the way of sitting on the floor, first and foremost, knees, ankles, and feet. You need them to help you get up and down. So even if you do have a hip replacement or trouble with your back or trouble with your shoulders, which is the next one, if your knees and your feet are troubling you, then you're going to have a real longer journey. It can still be done. It can absolutely still be done, but you may have to do some more progressive strengthening. And you may just need to be a bit more creative about how you get up and down and what supports you use and how many. But I really encourage you to figure it out, work it out, and be creative, because the journey of being comfortable getting up from and down to, and then spending time sitting on, lying on the floor is going to help you heal. Obviously, always prioritize your doctor and your physiotherapist's advice first. All right, so injuries wise, that will be an issue. Obviously, joint replacements until they've healed are going to make things a little trickier, but once they've healed, your mobility should be the same as, if not better than it was before. Sometimes people suffer with POTS, so moving too quickly between seated and standing in any position might give you a sudden blood pressure drop or a dizzy spell. So that's something to take into account. There could be all sorts of things, but short of genuinely missing the necessary limbs, everyone can do this. There's a way. Take your time and go gently. There's no ego here. There's no more ego with sitting on the floor than there is with sitting on a chair. So let's talk about the equipment that will help you. And I really struggle with people who refuse to use things to elevate their hips when they're sitting on the floor, because the point is you should be sitting with better posture than you would on a chair. Chair dictates your posture. When you're on the floor, it's up to you to make sure you're comfortable. And for most people, that means elevating your hips. The reason I'm sitting so lovely and tall is because my hips are a little bit elevated. Doesn't take any strain for me to be able to sit here like this. I'm very comfortable. If I sat here for too long, my knees would become welded into the position and my feet would go numb. But for now, this is fine. Most of the equipment we're going to use is going to be supporting and elevating your hips, or helping remove compression on your knees. By doing so, making it more comfortable, that's knees and ankles, but by elevating the hips, allowing them to open up and allowing your spine to lengthen and lift so that your spine is rebounding off the surface that it's sitting on and you're not all squashed up. Really important. If you sit on the floor with the same crappy posture you have in a car seat, you're going to have the same backache. Okay, so first bit of kit, I'm sitting on it. This is a zabuton. A zabuton is just padding. It's padding for the floor that will make it more comfortable, and especially in the wintertime when it's cold, this keeps you off the cold floor. I've replaced the filling of mine with a medium density recycled foam block, nice big one. It's much more supportive and it's much more comfortable, and it is very affordable. So highly recommend zabuton. Next most useful bit of kit for most people is the zafu, which is the traditional meditation cushion. This one, you can sit it under your hips like a little mini stool, or you can do your cross-legged position here with your bum right up, or my preferred way and most people's better way of using it is to topple off and make it into a wedge. So your sitting bones are supported and your spine lifts out. This depends on A, what's comfortable, and B, how tight your hips are feeling on the day. Some days I sit up really high and that's just perfect. Sometimes I'll have two stacked together. And because I'm on my zabuton, my ankles are not poking into the floor, which is really nice. So that's your standard zafu meditation cushion. The next most common one that I see around, if you're buying, is the crescent meditation cushion, which is preformed into that wedge I just showed you. This is much smaller than most of them. It's a travel-sized one. And this cushion is my favorite. It's the one I use the most. It's the right sort of height for me. And yeah, you can see it's just formed itself into the perfect little wedge. And when I'm training yoga, teaching yoga or Pilates or floor-based seated work, this is the one that I use. So this is the one that I use when I'm being very active, more so than when I'm working on the floor. I have a desk on the floor. So this is more for active and less for when I'm going to be stationary for longer periods of time. So that's your crescent-shaped meditation cushion. This is really, if you were going to take everything away, this is the one I would want to keep. Okay, bolsters. Got two bolsters to show you here. I love the bolsters. I'm going to show you, first of all, the big one, how I use this to sit on the floor. This is my second, I'd say in my day-to-day life, this is probably the one that consistently gets used. I use them all, to be fair. Now I think about it, I'm always using all of them. This one is wedged up against the wall, always, like so. And when I sit, I just sit my hips back against that. And again, it works a bit like the wedge, slightly different because the wedge is up behind my hips a bit more. And I'm really comfortable here. And this is a really nice little support for sitting tall. And because my back is not supported, but my hips are, they're just wedged in, I'm quite comfortable here and I'm sitting with good posture and I can fidget very, very easily, right? Just always having a little something for my hips to rest against. So I absolutely love the bolsters, adore them. This one also works very well as a kneeling aid. Very comfortable. In yoga and restorative yoga, this is a fantastic aid for postures like child's pose, supported child's pose. If you're going deep, supported bridge pose, supported pigeon. They're very, very versatile. The mini bolster, don't use it so much for sitting on, but this is a very, very favorite one amongst myself and clients particularly, because we use it for reclining supported postures. It sits between the shoulder blades and then you can lie down with your arms wide and have a really nice, long held, progressive chest stretch. You would do that after you did your developmental stretches, your active stretches. Or you could lie down on the floor and stick it in your sacrum behind your hips for a supported bridge. And that really opens up the front of the hips. It's gentle back bend. It's super relaxing for your front body. Again, after you've done your active and developmental stretches, you can lie on those positions and hold them for, just lie there for 15 minutes. It's not going to hurt you. So those are your first set, traditional bits of equipment. All of these can be replaced by things that many, many people have in the house already, because all we're really doing is padding out knees and elevating hips in order to let them open up more easily, support the hips, and lift the spine and take compression away from the knees. So for a backup, I just use a very solid blanket. Most people these days don't tend to have blankets like these. Most blankets you have around your house are usually sort of fluffy and sort of fleecy. They're not very good. You need things that are very supportive. So a towel, big towels that fold down or roll up are brilliant. So this can turn into a wedge. This can roll up into a bolster. If you've got big towels, they'll roll up into big bolsters. So towels, any kind of bits of firm material that can be rolled, old duvet covers, old sheets, depending on how you fold them, how you stack them, you get a very supportive, but a surface that has a little bit of give. So it sits softly under your hips, but it pushes back up against you because you're not going to sink down into it. So my first recommendation is if you're using stuff at home, old towels, folded, rolled, they're fantastic. They work really well, as do old sheets. Towels are nice because they're a bit thicker. You may have yoga blocks. Yoga blocks do the job. They can be a little firm, but if you have particular issues with your knees or ankles, they're much more supportive. So for example, if you have quite serious ankle or knee situation, you could turn 2 blocks up and sit like a little stool. And look how nice that is. That's supporting my spine really well because my spine is so supported on this very solid base. But look how little compression there is on my knees, my ankles. Yes, my feet are flexed, plantar flexed, but there's really no effort or weight going down through my ankles. So that's really beautiful. You have to be careful when you have your blocks this angle because they're not stable until you sit down on them. But then as you get more flexible, you can sit on the lower setting or you can stack them and work your way down until once again, you can just use it in the same way as your meditation cushion and maybe even just wedge like so. Works in exactly the same way as does this one. Now I'm going to show you something with this which will work for any of these 4 items. And that is sometimes when you want to sit, the problem is your heels to your hips rather than your hips. So in that situation, you can place a flatter block or a rolled up blanket or a crescent meditation cushion between your hips and your heels. And that is really nice. So what it actually does is it just pads out, just a slight elevation. It pads the space between your hips and your heels, takes a little bit of weight off the knees, but it allows the knees to still have their full range of folded motion quite comfortably. So it's pulling my weight off my knees and onto my shins. This will vary from person to person. So this is really beautiful way of doing things. All of these bits of equipment, apart from that method that I showed you with the bolster, they all work in roughly the same way. I'm going to give an honorable mention to the most regularly used bits of equipment for floor work in this studio. Pilates foam support blocks. These are recycled chipped foam. This is a half block. This is a full block. We use them for sitting on. We use them just as I've shown you. We use them for padding out knees. We use them for padding out foreheads for front lying work. We use them for side lying work, padding out hips on side lying work for bony people, padding out waists for hourglass people. That's how I use them quite often. These are fantastic. They are some of the most useful bits of kit and so versatile and so affordable. They're no good for weight bearing, as blocks, but they're fantastic for weight bearing as a seated support, reclining support, head support in any direction, or padding. I use these for padding out my knees whenever I do general kneeling lunge work or any work that I need to get deep into loaded flexibility with my knee on the floor. My knees don't like being on the floor. There's nothing wrong with them. They just don't like it. They don't like bearing weight. So these are perfect for that. So yeah, if I was going to recommend that you spend money for a bit of equipment that's versatile, the Pilates chipped foam medium density blocks are brilliant. So that's your kit. Essentially, when you're sitting, you're only looking at more or less 4 different positions that you can sit in and infinite variations in between. So let's talk quickly through each one because you are going to find your own way through your seated positions and you're going to support yourself creatively to make sure that you feel comfortable in all of them. First, in cross legs, most people's nemesis at some point in their life. My favorite version of cross legs is what we call perfect pose in yoga. The legs are crossed, one heel is in and the other heel is in front, and you can switch that over. It's much more comfortable than the traditional simple cross where the ankles, I can never remember how to do simple cross, that's it, where the ankles are stacked because A, this I find much harder on my knees, and B, I don't like the knobbly bones pressing in against each other. So that's crisscross, that's your standard cross leg position. Of course, I've padded my hips, so my spine's tall and I'm comfortable. So yeah, adjust in order to be comfortable. My preference is perfect pose, this layered cross-legged, one foot in front of the other. Some people like a half lotus. Some people like full lotus, but full lotus is generally where you put both legs up. That's generally for a yoga practice as a bind rather than a position you just sit in. You might knacker your knees if you do that. I've automatically gone into another one, which is just sitting with your feet bent in front of you. This is very nice. At my desk, I often sit in this position, one leg to the side, one up. It's quite active. I tend not to slouch or lean when I'm sitting like this, and my spine is tall, and I'll switch sides. So this is sort of half squat, half kneeling, but there's no weight going down either leg. Of course, knees out in front is just an equivalent of stretching your legs out in front of you. And if that's tight for your knees, you can just take your support and stick it under your knees to soften the extension through the backs of your knees, and that's really comfortable. Equally, you could stretch your legs out wide into a straddle seated position. Most people don't love this, but it's nice to be able to stretch out. And maybe you pad out one or both knees. This knee's a little sore today, so I've automatically padded it. Sometimes you might go into a little seated, sort of seated tree pose situation where you've got one leg tucked in and the other extended. Any variation of these is nice. You also might swing both of your legs over to the side in this seated 99, you can call it 90-90, you can call it mermaid, you can call it deer pose, Z pose, people call it all sorts of things. I'm still sitting on my cushion, my hips are elevated, and that's why I can move so easily and why I'm not slouching. There's endless different variations. Of course, the variations on these lovely kneeling situations that tend to be the most versatile for the most people. Just pile up as many cushions as you need and sit lightly like this. And the higher you are, as I said, the less pressure you put through your legs. So those are most of them. And then of course you have your standard squat. And once you've worked your squat, most people can hang out in a squat for ages like this. But to be fair, while it's important to be able to sit for long periods of time in a squat or in a crouch, you want to think of that as a functional movement that you can get in and out of and fidget easily and move around in, as I am, rather than a sitting position. If you're in a squat and you're developing it and learning how to do it better, then chances are at some point you might want to pad out your heels, and this could be a really great way of cultivating and developing your squat. Now, I've been in training situations where I've just been hanging out in a squat for half an hour, 20 minutes, and people have been surprised. But this is not an active squat. This is a just chilling squat, right? I'm not working many muscles here in a very active way, but I spend a lot of my time coming up and down from the floor. So for me, they're very comfortable positions to be in, and I've cultivated them in my strength training. So my last little note about your equipment before we go is that you should choose equipment, as I mentioned earlier, that's firm and feeds back into your body. So you're not collapsing and sinking back into the ground. It's counterproductive if you're sinking into the ground. So all of the bought equipment that I have, the Covers are removable, so you can wash them, hygiene people. But also they are filled with seed. So you can get squishy fillings, but I like buckwheat or linseed or equivalent because they're very firm. When you sit your butt down, they will sink a little bit, mold to your body, and then push back up. That's feedback that's going to rebound through your body and lift you up and help you sit tall rather than dumping your weight down into the floor and collapsing your posture. So all of these, this is all medium density foam. This is cork, so it's very, very supportive. This is a really fine knit wool, so it's very firm and very warm. This is linseed. Yeah, and the rest are buckwheat. Even my pillows that I sleep on have buckwheat in them, and the mattress I use is hard because I want my body to be supported. So the mattress meets me and my body meets the mattress rather than me sinking and everything giving way underneath me. If you have removable covers, you can wash them. If you've got removable inner covers, you can adjust the amount of content. So if you need your cushions to be fuller, you can get some more buckwheat and fill them out more. Or if you need them to be flatter, you can empty some out and keep it to one side and you can fill them up again if you want. So that's about as much information as anyone can give you, apart from be creative, enjoy yourself, little and often, every day, a couple of minutes a day, sitting on the floor, maybe in the living room, maybe reading a book, maybe watching TV. Build slowly towards your sitting and don't get egotistical about it. Just become freed by being able to use the floor for your training, for your sitting, for your reading, for your watching telly, for whatever it is you're doing. Practice getting up and getting down. Your body will thank you and you'll feel freed from the tyranny of chairs. Thank you for hanging around. I'll speak to you soon. Bye.